Good evening, everyone. My name is Sam, and on behalf of Book Soup, I'd like to thank you all for joining us for tonight's event with Jayne Allen in conversation with Emily Henry, here to discuss Black Girls Must Die Exhausted. Tonight's event will end with a Q&A, and to pause, it's a gorgeous book cover. I just keep looking at the flower. It's just, I love it. It's the vibe. I love it. Tonight's event will end with a Q&A. To submit a question, please use the Ask a Question button at the bottom of the screen. And if you see a question on the list that you'd like for our speakers to answer, you can click the like button. It'll bump it up in the queue, and we will answer as many questions as time will allow. And please also feel free to engage with the conversation and each other in the chat area. Since we're virtual, it's nice to know that you're all here with us, even though I can see that you are. But yeah, talkative is always fun. So we'll be hosting more virtual events in the near future, and you can learn more about them by signing up for our email newsletter. You can just go check out our website, and you can follow us on social media at Book Soup, and you can also follow us right here on Crowdcast to get direct notifications, and our past events are also available on our YouTube channel. So please support Book Soup and our authors tonight by purchasing a copy of tonight's featured book. You can do that by clicking the green button right below the viewer screen, and it'll redirect you to our website where you can complete the checkout process. And yeah, independent bookstores, it's Jayne's first book, so it's a really perfect time to support. And we're also open for in-store browsing, so if you are local to Los Angeles, please come say hi daily from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., and we'd love to see you. And with that said, let me introduce our guests for this evening. Jayne Allen is the pen name of Janique Seeley, a graduate of Duke University and Harvard Law School. An avid traveler, she speaks 3 languages and has visited 5 continents. Drawing from her unique experiences as an attorney and entrepreneur, she crafts transcultural stories that touch upon contemporary women's issues, such as workplace and career dynamics, race, fertility, modern relationships, and mental health awareness. Her writing echoes her desire to bring both multiculturalism and multidimensionality to a rich and colorful cast of characters inspired by the magic uncovered in everyday life. Black Girls Must Die Exhausted is her first novel, which she calls The Epitaph of My 30s. And a proud native of Detroit, she currently lives in Los Angeles, and we are so excited to have her. And our in-conversation guest, Emily Henry, is the #1 New York Times bestselling author of People We Meet on Vacation and Beach Read. She studied creative writing at Hope College and now spends most of her time in Cincinnati, Ohio, and the part of Kentucky just beneath it. You can find her on Instagram at Emily Henry Writes, and we are also excited to have her. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the camera over to Jayne and Emily. Please sit back, relax, and enjoy the presentation.
Yay! Hello!
Thank you. Hi! Oh my God, I'm so excited.
I'm so excited, and I'm so grateful to Book Soup for hosting us, and I'm honored to be in conversation with you tonight. I mean, I already messaged you after I read your book, so you know this. But for everyone in the audience, I got this book sent to me kind of a long time ago, and I was refreshing myself on it today for this conversation, and I was just like, wow, this is all coming back so vividly. And I just feel like it's not only one of my favorite books of the year, but I think it's just one of the best debut novels that I've read in maybe ever.
Thank you. Oh my God.
I'm so honored to be here talking to you, and just cannot wait to hear every single thing about this book.
Well, this is an honor for me. I mean, I'm just let me how did I sneak in the back door? But thank you so much to Book Soup, and thank you for doing this. This is a huge honor for me as a debut novelist, a debut author, that you would take the time, and you've been so supportive, and I just cannot thank you enough. So I'm super excited.
I mean, my pleasure. This book really is so great, and I'm really excited for everyone to read it so we can start talking about it. Obviously, the cover and the title are just perfect. I feel like, I know you're not supposed to judge a book by either of those things necessarily, but I think I went into it with such high expectations already because of just the whole package, and could not have been more thrilled with what's inside of it. And yeah, it's going to be a huge hit this fall. Everybody better buy it.
Thank you.
I'm going to turn my volume down because I think I'm echoing a little bit. And so everybody let me know if you can hear me and if the echo gets any better. So I guess I figured we would just kick off with you doing your like elevator pitch for the book, since it's day one. Like a few people will have read it probably already, like in the hours of it since its release, but mostly we're gonna go like spoiler light. So do you want to just like talk about like the basic premise of the book?
Sure. So, Black Girls Must Die Exhausted is the story that centers Tabitha Walker. And she is a woman, and she is living what she thinks is her best life in contemporary times. She has a great career, one she always wanted. She's a local news reporter in Los Angeles, and she's just got her checklist underway. She thinks she's got it all under control. So, in the layers of her life, she also happens to be a Black woman. So, there's the layers of the experience of race. And I really wanted to make this a human story that didn't put race first or anything first. I wanted you to feel Tabitha as a human being and then go through this experience with her and let her unpack the layers for you so that you could really feel like what she feels. So, and so I thought it was important. I wanted to make it important that her perspective important. And so we meet her on her very worst day, where the checklist falls apart. Okay, so she finds out she has a reproductive health crisis, infertility issue that totally upsets what she had taken for granted. That she would be, and she wants to have a family in a traditional sense. She wants to be a wife and a mother, and that's important to her because of her family history. And we find out about that in the book, and some really wild things happened in her family, complex family history, and in her youth. And so she sets forward in trying to reconfigure her life. And so we join her in this journey, and you just get to experience all of the layers of her life, of womanhood, of what it's like to be a contemporary woman, all the decisions, the competing decisions she has to make, whether it's career and relationship and family and friends, and how race just factors in on an everyday basis as a Black woman, and just what those experiences feel like. So I wanted to be a foundation for important conversations for readers, and something that you can really, really feel. And you laugh with her, you cry with her, you root for her. And by the end of the novel, you feel like you've had an experience. So that's sort of the long and short of it. There's a lot of characters to meet. Her grandmother, who happens to be white, and they have a really beautiful, intimate, lovely relationship. And some other character, her grandmother's best friend,
Yes,
Miss Gretchen, who's 90 and a firebrand.
We should all be so lucky to be Miss Gretchen.
All these, I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like, if I can be Miss Gretchen when I grow up, I'll be so happy.
Yeah.
But so there's just a lot of people to meet. It's a kind of relationship centered novel, and it really, I think it's a little bit different. I wanted it to feel like a virtual reality experience. And
yeah. Wow, that's so interesting, because that's kind of what I have been thinking about, in just like trying to think like, what do I want to ask her? What do I want to know? And that was like what I was saying, like the reason that this really stands out to me, there are a lot of amazing debut novels. So this is not to put anyone down at all. But I think the reason that this stands out to me so much as a debut, especially, is that it's so nuanced in a way that, like, it's not that long of a book, like it's a quick read, but every single character of this fairly large cast really feels real in the way that they, like, they make the decisions that, like, from the outside, when you see your friends making those decisions, you're like, no, don't do that. But then, like, when it's you're like, oh, I would totally do that. Like, they're just all so real, and nobody is just like perfect, and nobody is all bad, and like it's just really it feels very big, like you're saying virtual reality. And I really feel that, because like you were saying, it's like you're going through Tabby's, like her fertility issues, and you're going through her workplace issues, and like the drama with her friends, and like the tensions that arise there, and her relationships. And it's really, like, kind of weird to me almost how well this is all balanced, where I never felt like there's too much going on. I just felt like I was in her life, and I really got to experience this full breadth of like what she's going through. And it's so much, which is just like, I'm guessing the point of the title is like, she has so much that she's dealing with. And yeah, there's so much beautiful like intersectionality in every component of the story where it's like you're really looking at this woman's very, very, very specific experience, and she just becomes so relatable. And her best friends, I want you to talk for a minute about her best friends too, because they are so important to the story. And one of the things I think that really hooked me right away was this feeling of these very real, authentic friendships where these three women are like, theoretically in the same stage of life, but that looks very different for them. And, that creates a lot of complicated feelings between them.
Yeah. Well, I really was trying to push myself to make the characters complex. And it was important for me to give them texture. And I was, and so I might, I have like pages of backstory. So I think like part of, you always overdo something, when it's like, I've been hearing this about debut novels, and I think I really overdid it when I was.
Maybe you overdid it on the back end, but it paid off so well on the front end,
Thank you. Thank you. I think I overdid it a little bit in the character development. I have like pages of backstory and like, people, Laila, who's Tabitha's friend. I know her parents, her grandparents, so I did all of that.
Incredible. But that shows. I mean, it shows. And it's like, obviously so little of that can actually make it into the book, but it really does show. Like everybody's making the decisions they would make where you're like, this person has a real history. This is a real person.
Yeah, I was hoping for that. And this is going to sound a little weird, but I was thinking about it like a mystery. Like I wanted the reader to look at it like a mystery. And as you go through the book and you see that things happen, and I left kind of clues along the way. So when you're like, well, how did that happen? And you're like, well, how did I miss that? And then you go back and there's actually like kind of clues along the way, why this person thought this way or what they did. And I thought with Tabitha, her friends, Alexis and Laila, they are different versions of her, basically. She's in the middle, and there's Laila, who's kind of discovering herself and kind of just a free artisty, like says what she wants. She's a strong friend, says what she wants. And there's Alexis, who took this very traditional path, got married very early, kind of lost herself in her marriage and her family, which is what Tabitha's always aspired for. So it's like Lexi's purportedly the perfect thing, and Laila purportedly the strong one, but nothing is as it seems.
Yeah.
As it always happens with friendships. And I just had so much fun unpacking that and discovering that and kind of unraveling. Everybody's going to unravel in this story, and then they have to kind of put themselves back together again. So Tabitha's unraveling kind of sparks all this other unraveling, and we get to see who these people are besides the layers of label that they've assigned themselves or have been assigned to them.
Yeah, that's really, I think I kept thinking, especially with Alexis, which again, like such a rich backstory. This is like very early on, so I don't consider this a spoiler, but you find out that her nickname in high school was Sexy Lexi. And so it's like, she was like the hot friend who like everybody wanted to date. And now she's, married with kids. And like you said, like has lots
around.
Things have changed.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting because I think their dynamic, three of them, their dynamic feels so real to me because there's that sort of, there's that sort of feeling that like you said, they've assigned themselves these labels. They're kind of trying to project this one thing. And in some ways, there's also like this secret resentment of each other because it's like, it's so easy to be like, I have it the hardest of my friends. And, if I could just like get married, like Lexi, or if I just didn't need anyone like Laila, like whatever. And you find out, like people are just always more complicated than that. And
everybody.
And like in this book though, like in books, I feel like you usually get like two complicated people. I don't know, maybe I'm just like not reading the right books, but really it just, and like what you're saying about the mystery element, like as I'm reading, I think it's really hard now. I don't know if you have this experience, but to separate out like the writing part of your brain where like when you like something, you're like, how is she doing this? Like,
I know you start reading like a technical read for everything.
And like, which I will say when I was reading this, it also, gets to the point where it's like, there are moments where I'm like, how is she doing this? I want to do this. And then there are moments where it's like, you fall into the momentum of it and you forget you're reading, which is like the best reading experience of all. But what you're saying about kind of this mystery threaded through, I think really works so well, because there is this, even though it's sort of this like slice of life story in some ways, like even though, you know, it's also the darkest moments in a lot of ways for Tabitha, especially, there's still like this slice of life quality where it's like, you know, things at work, relationships, all of that. But there is a propulsiveness to the story. And I think that was probably because of this feeling of mystery that you created, where it's like, you know, you just want to know, like you have a question, like every chapter is just kind of giving you questions about these people, and you can tell that you're in the hands of a writer who actually like plans to answer them. It's not like a mistake question.
Yeah.
Where you're like,
Right.
what are you doing that?
It's not a mistake. No, you're in good hands. I promise I was thinking about you.
You were thinking about it, and it just, but it's also like I've been saying, nuance I think is like the number one word that like comes to mind when I think about this book, because the arc of it is very nuanced. The ending, which again, no spoilers, but it feels very nuanced. It really feels like kind of like the best of humanity, where it's like, you know, none of us is perfect, but like this is what happens when people like face, you know, their fears, or, you know, that sounds so cheesy, but face kind of like their history and figure out like what they really want, and don't let like, the past kind of hold them back from that. It's just so good.
Thank you. Yeah, that was one. I mean, that was what the gift of fiction was for me, because I think somebody just asked me today, was this, they originally thought it was nonfiction, and I when they read it, they were a little bit surprised that it was a novel. And I was like, you know, for me, the gift of fiction is to push. I want to put people, complex characters, in situations, and push them past everyday courage, and then see what plays out. So that's what this novel allowed me to do, was to create these scenarios that, you know, most people would kind of chicken out, you know, when they got into it. They would do something more predictable, or less with less, tending towards less conflict.
Less vulnerability.
Less vulnerability. But these characters in this book are doing more. They're gonna do the conflict thing, or they're gonna have the vulnerable moment, or they're gonna, do the unexpected thing, and then the rest gets to play out. So that was what I wanted to use this book for, even to start important, or just model for myself, even, because things I've never seen, important conversations. And it's not a spoiler to say that, I'm going to say this, that in the book, Tabitha and her grandmother have a conversation where they ask each other what life feels like for them as the respective race that they've been living. So her grandmother's white, she's a Black woman. They're super close. They love each other so much. And in this space of intimacy of their relationship, they have this conversation, which probably never happens if you think about it, and within families. And there's plenty of blended families, mixed families. But why don't we go there? And I think it's scary as hell, and for whatever reason, it's scary, even for the closest of family members of people. And then but I hope in just seeing these two people find the courage and the intimacy and the love and this, and create the space to do it, that maybe people reading it are like, why don't I have, and they find their own courage in watching these characters do it. So that was kind of my hope and my thinking, and what I was trying to use fiction for.
Yeah, I mean, you really, again, like you just nailed it. Like there really is just this, there's just so much compassion in this book, and it's really interesting because it's just sort of like emanates, like it's not, I do think that a lot of the characters are compassionate characters, but I also think there's just something about your writing that really emanates that, and that creates, just that space for vulnerability. And like, it is comforting to read. This is like a very good comfort read, I think, even though there's like some really heavy stuff in it. I feel like it's a good comfort read because it does, as a reader, it gave me the sense that like, sometimes the worst thing that ever happened to you is actually like an opportunity for your life to become better and fuller and happier and healthier. And like, that's just, it's a beautiful gift that's in this book. Like, it's just so
I'm so glad to hear that is a takeaway. I wanted, that I wanted to have a substantive takeaway when you finish the book, and so to hear that just really makes me happy to hear that.
I mean, it's so beautiful. It's really, it's interesting to me as a writer, again, like hearing you talk about kind of your reasons for things. And we were talking about this a little bit before everybody joined in, but I do kind of want to hear, like, I think if we talk about, how this book began, the first kernel of the story, but also why this book, why this specific book, and you've touched on that a little bit, but I feel like there's just a deeper story here, and I want to hear it.
Yeah. Well, so I got the idea for the book in 2016, and yeah, exactly. I'm like, I know, I was like, oh, there's a pussy hat I want to wear, and there's also, there's other issues too, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't turn away from any of this, and I can't turn off the television, and I just feel like there's so many battles to fight, and I'm at the center of so many of them, and I thought, God, this is really weighty, and it's stressful, and I think other women, other people have to be feeling this, and there's so much strength in especially female friendships, and the way that women support each other and can support each other. And so I started bubbling this idea that if I'm feeling like this, other people gotta be feeling like this.
Yeah.
And then maybe I could do something or create something that would be like a little bit of a balm, like an acknowledgement, definitely,
Right.
but then kind of a celebration, like, but hey, look how fabulous we are, like in general. And kind of a love letter of sorts. And then, saying, hey, let's not be so stuck in a place of survival. Like, what does thriving look like? At least, let's imagine that together, and kind of wind up on this journey with I hoped I could create something like that. And that was pretty audacious for me, because I'd never written a novel. I didn't think I could write a novel.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, I don't even know where to start. But I thought if I were to do that, that's what I'd want to do. And I wanted to also explore what the experience of race is in a like what it feels like, and what is it. I started thinking about that too. I'm like, what is this? Like, what is that? Like you say we use these labels, but it's arbitrary, the label itself.
Right.
But then the label creates an experience, and there's a human being that's affected.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I really wanted to explore that and understand it for myself. So this was kind of a little bit of a tool for me to understand even, that layer, like this, this thing that gets imposed. What is it on the human level? So it was important for me. I was like, if I'm going to center, and I think it's important to have a Black female protagonist centered, because the protagonist is the one that goes through the biggest transformation. So we don't have a lot of Black female protagonists in fiction, and I wanted to make it meaningful to do that with Tabitha in this story.
Yeah.
And so that was the genesis of this. It was very ambitious to start, obviously. And it took me a year and a half to even figure out how to go about it.
Wow. So were you just kind of like tinkering in your mind and just kind of taking notes and all of that for the first year and a half?
I was taking classes.
Oh,
So
cool.
I'm like a lifelong learner. I'm a big proponent of like, if you can learn it.
Yeah.
Everything is learnable. And so I took classes, and I was trying to understand story crafting, story structure, and I realized, okay, I'm not a literary person. I didn't study. I was an engineer undergrad, so
wow.
I'm a
So you're
structure
just a genius. You're not a literary person, just a very smart person.
No, I mean,
and then law school.
Well, no, I mean, but the thing is, I guess everybody has their strengths, and for me as a writer, and I realized, every writer has different strengths, and some people are super literary and they can make poetry out of anything, and everybody has their strengths. So for me, structure is mine. I can structure a story. You tell me there's a structure, I will structure it, and I can craft character, and I can do so. I just played to my strengths, and created the story that was reflective of me. And that was okay. I had to give myself, I had to stop trying to be other people.
I think that's just always good advice. I mean, for anything, but for writing especially, like
Yeah.
you just lean into what, because no one can write what Jayne Allen can write. Like that's,
I had
you
to
are the only
realize that.
person. Yeah.
I mean, I think as an author, and I mean, you're you, so you're in a different class. But for us baby authors, I think it's so tempting to think, oh my gosh, comparatively, like I'm not,
Mhm.
doing the work of this great author, or I'm not, and I maybe that's what everything has to be. And I think
Right.
finding a way to let that go. And there was a moment where I was like, okay, I'm good at this. Like, and this is from my life experience. Like, I
Yeah.
know people. I know
That's what I was
people
gonna
really
say.
well.
I think your strength is you really understand people. You really understand people. I'm waiting for you to pull out the like, and I also studied psychology.
No, I kind of informally. I mean,
Yeah,
look, I've
right.
been single. I'm 43. I've been single for 43 years, and I have dated my way into an informal psychology degree.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Which is the worst way to get that degree, many would say, but also
So
very
expensive.
relatable.
It was so expensive.
Yeah. Right. It would have been cheaper just to take out the student loans at that point.
Really. I mean, I would much rather have read
Oh
about
my
it. Thank
gosh.
you. Yeah.
But I do feel like that's a perfect pivot because actually, like, I have like a little list of notes. So if you see me doing this, I'm not like texting. I have a list of notes of things I wanted to ask you about. But another one of, I keep being like, my favorite thing, my 700th favorite thing about Black Girls Must Die Exhausted. One of my favorite things really is Mark,
Oh.
which Mark, for everybody who hasn't read yet, Mark is Tabitha's love interest. She has a very complicated relationship with him. But I feel like the thing that I love so much about Mark is we were kind of talking about earlier how the characters are so relatable because you're like, don't do that, but also I would do that. And I think with Mark and Tabitha, you're just like, oh my God, every single one of my friends has dated Mark. And you're just like, you don't know like the stories that they tell you. You're just like, I can't tell if this guy is like in love with you or if like he wouldn't care if you got hit by a bus.
Right.
Like, what's his deal? But there's still so much compassion for Mark, like from the viewpoint of the novel. And I just feel like he's a really great character. So I want you to talk a little bit about creating Mark and the thought that, I mean, you did the notes thing for him too. Clearly
Yeah.
he's got the backstory, which we get a little bit of in the book.
Quite a backstory. I really wanted to make a complex male character, where this is. I mean, it's a romance. I've gotten the definition of romance is like just as long as there's a happily ever after, it can be a romance. So I'm like in the most broad definition.
Yes.
But for this was like I wanted to have this complex guy that you need to understand, and want to understand. And it's just not, nobody in the book is who they appear to be on the surface.
Right.
And it's like, I think it's a very human thing that everybody warrants further exploration.
Yeah.
And a little bit of a chance to, my dog is doing a lot right now. Sorry.
We love it.
I don't know if you can hear all of that. He's having a ball. But everybody deserves, a further exploration, I feel like. And with Mark, I just wanted to try to go there and make somebody that you kind of, you don't know how to feel about him. Like you have this visceral feeling, but then maybe, and that's kind of where Tabby is too. It's like, well, there's always a maybe, with him, and there's stuff to unpack, and he's a human being too. And I think a lot of us, especially in dating, we project onto this flawed and complex human being who we want and need them to be. And the reality is always so much more different than that. So with Mark, I wanted to give the benefit of that, to really make him be someone you have to unpack to understand. And you can't really, even though Tabitha will kind of at the first, as you meet Mark and as she introduces him, she'll kind of sum him up as like this, two-dimensional being. But no, he's multidimensional, and she learns that. And so does the reader.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, yeah, it really is like, he's the guy that all of your friends date and you're like, be be careful. But then he's also the guy that you just wouldn't be able to resist. Where it's
Exactly.
like, you're like, there is something here. And like, how do I get to it? And yeah. And also what you were talking about, how Tabby kind of like reduces him to be like, this is my boyfriend, Mark. This is like the outline of a person that I am dating. I thought back to you talking about how, you know, one of your biggest strengths is structure. And it made me think, out of Layla, Alexis, and Tabby, are you a Tabby?
You know what? I'm a little bit of all of them.
Yeah.
I don't know if I used to be a Tabby.
Yeah.
I think I'm like, I mean, I want to be a Ms. Gretchen, to be honest.
Yes.
But
again, we should all be so lucky.
I think I'm more of a Layla, you know,
Yeah.
and I might be like a Lisa Sinclair too. I don't know. So there's, I just, as I don't know, day by day it's different, but I don't really think Tabby is me. And I think Tabby was me in my 30s. And,
Right.
and now
And
I'm in
is
my
it like-
40s and I'm not her anymore.
So is that, I was going to ask also, so you know, you've talked about this book kind of as your epitaph to your 30s.
Yeah.
Is that sort of what it's about? It's like the things that you, like, just talk about that for a minute.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know what? This is the book that I wish somebody handed me the day I turned 30.
Yes.
Like, I wish somebody had just been like, here, read this, you know, there's going to be some stuff and that you need to know. And I really wish that, so I wrote kind of, you know, like, here's this encapsulation of this experience kind of in a nutshell of this decade. And for me, it was, you know, this a little bit of an obsession about like family and you know, dating and career. And it is that, like, you know, the book kind of starts off where she's like, the day I turned 30, it was like the end of my adolescence. And it was like smack dab into the meaning of everything. Like everything was meaningful. And I think that's kind of the rude awakening of 30 is like,
gosh,
oh no.
Yeah.
like I'm an adult and this really means something. And like, this isn't dress rehearsal anymore. And
yes.
So I wanted to talk about all the things and also infertility, because you know, I don't see that a lot in fiction or nonfiction. I went through my own journey with that in my late 30s, early 40s, and just having it spoken about, you know, normalizing it, because information and knowledge and sharing knowledge on that topic just makes you, first of all, empowers you, because you know, there's no set answer of how to approach these things. And it makes you feel less alone, because I think, you know, so many women are dealing with this and it's not spoken about regularly or in the open. And you know, the power of having support in a community with these kinds of things is just, you know, everybody deserves that. So I wanted to just loop it all in and you know, give this woman this journey that, you know, I wish that somebody had talked to me about. I wish somebody had said when I was 30, like, hey, you know, think about these things at least. You know, what's your insurance plan like at your job? You can make these decisions about your employer, all that stuff. So it's kind of that too, a little bit.
I'm just thinking, like, what is Jayne gonna put in her second book? Like, you got it all. Like, it is all in this book. But that's so true. It really feels like it's both this like guidebook, but like the start of the guidebook is basically like, throw out the guidebook. Like, you can't expect things to go any one certain way. And I think you're just so right. Like, in your 20s, you kind of feel like you're allowed to do and be anything. You're like, it's my 20s, whatever.
Yeah.
And the second you hit 30, you start looking at like kind of just how you pictured your life, like when I'm a grown up.
Right.
And you start comparing it and you're like, well, this isn't what I was supposed to be doing, and everything feels like there's a timer on it. And in some cases, like with fertility stuff, there is a very literal timer. But everybody's like, you know, it's just so relatable. It's like, I think one of my favorite things about the book also is just, like you were saying, Tabitha is sort of like in the middle of the spectrum, but she has the friend who's already got the marriage and the kids. And then she's like kind of having to decide, like, well, if things don't go forward with Mark immediately, like, you know,
what do I do?
What do I do? And it's like, I have friends in that exact situation who are like, would I be open to having a baby by myself? Like,
yeah,
you know, it's the eventualities that nobody really does prepare you for. And it's such a nice way to explore that through fiction, so that it's, I don't know, it's just less daunting, and it really does give you that sense that you're not alone, like you were saying.
Yeah, it's so fun, like, to be an author. It's like you can craft, you can make stuff up and like and see what happens. And that was really cool and when I was going through my infertility journey, I looked for books, fiction and nonfiction, where with the story played out. Like, tell me what to expect, show me something. And there was maybe a handful, like literally so few. And I searched high and low for anything, and I couldn't find anything. And so I just think it's important to have more of these stories. And there's just so many people suffering in silence with this. My neighbor, I was telling her about my book, and she was like, I've been going through this infertility journey, and I haven't shared it with my friends, even because I didn't know what to say. And wow. And that just started a whole conversation between us. And I'm like, wow, if that can,
it's working.
It's working. Yay. So I just think people, to have that support, to have that visibility, to know this is much more common than you think. You're not alone in this space. Here's a starting point. Like, there's information to be had. There's community to be had. Those are things I didn't have. And so fiction has just been a remarkable way to try to do some cool things that I wish I had had in my 30s. So
yeah, I mean, yes, this really, like, as someone currently in my 30s, there really is just so much great comfort. It's like the thing of, like, sometimes you want to read something that totally ignores the real world, and it's just like not acknowledging it. And sometimes you're like, I can handle anything, but this really is kind of the perfect blend of both, where it's like very real, but it just does feel just a very supportive book. It's like being among friends. It's so great.
That's what I wanted to feel like. So I'm glad you said. I wanted you to feel like you were, hanging out with people you would hang out with,
Yeah. Well, and I mean, there is a bracelet flask in this book. That's a small little thing to look forward to.
Yeah.
And I do have a friend who owns one of those huge chunky bracelet flasks. And so
I love it.
Yeah, I was just really. Yeah. Oh,
well, then you know how to identify, like, which friend that is.
Yes, exactly. And it very much is also. Yeah, I see we have a couple of questions. Anybody who has questions, please send them in, because we don't have that much longer. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything very important from my end. Let's see. Okay, so I did have like a little lightning round. Oh wait, hold on. I want to back up, because I do want to talk about your, like, if you want to. You also don't have to. If you're just this bores me, I've talked about this a lot past, like, you can do that. This is your event. But this book, that you've had kind of like a non-traditional, like, publishing journey with this, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk about that? Or
sure. No, I definitely do. I did. So when I wrote the manuscript and I gave it to my little beta readers, my group of trusted readers, one of the people who read it was my dad, who he doesn't read fiction, and he was like, this is really good, and you need to try to go the traditional route and get some support for this. So I decided that I was going to give it 12 letters in 6 weeks and give it a go. And I did identify some gatekeepers who represented similar works and different authors. And I got very, feedback was very disheartening. It was, we can't relate to your protagonist, and we don't like her, but I love her grandmother. I don't like her though. And that was, and I think that maybe they were trying to project on behalf of the reading audience, like, oh, well, maybe people, who aren't Black or who can't relate to this Black protagonist, or I don't know what it was, but I just didn't believe that for the readers, the market that I know. I was like, no.
Yeah.
This is not true. And the only way to make that not be true for me was I've got to put it out and let it find its audience and let them prove me right.
Yeah.
And so I I did my best. I, packaged it the best I could. I did it with I call it the OG version, but the first version of the book, and put it out in the world. It found its audience. It was a lot of people,
Wow.
and people wrote reviews. People were so supportive. People really galvanized community around the book and kind of elevated it up, and started amplifying it to the point where during the pandemic, still the pandemic, but when we
Yeah,
were
right.
in quarantine, I, had before that, I had speaking engagements and was starting to, start to bubble up, and everything got canceled. And so what I wanted to do most was continue conversations with readers. And I made myself available for any book club. Any book club that was reading my book, I said, I will meet with you
Wow.
whenever, as long as not 3 o'clock in the morning,
Yeah.
but like generally, I'm at home, you're at home, cool. So I wound up meeting with over 60 book clubs during that time.
Wow.
And then after George Floyd, in that window, people
Yeah.
were really looking for ways to understand race, like where I was in 2016. People
Yeah,
were like,
right.
wait, I need to
Exactly.
understand this.
Yeah.
And I need something. And so I was really happy that this book could be there as a resource. And it's fiction, where, you could see, get to understand something where kind of what you were saying, it's not super, super heavy. But it's something that gives you something substantive. So so I wound up in one of the book clubs. Somebody asked Ashley Bernardi. She asked me, what did I want next? And at that point, I was like, well, I really need a traditional publisher because I've reached the end of my
Yeah.
resources here. I don't know what else to do. And she's like, well, I think I can help you. And I didn't think much of it. I was like, okay,
Yeah, right. We know how that goes.
exactly, like, okay, but thank
Yeah.
you, and
Yeah.
but really she introduced me to my agent, Lucinda Halper, and like the very next day Lucinda set a meeting immediately. I told her my story. I told her what happened with the book and everything, and she was like, I get it. I get
Yeah.
it. She's like, I it's unusual, but I'm going to try my best, and I'm going to see if we can get you the deal that you said that you wanted. And she wound up perfectly placing this trilogy, the perfect home with the Harper Perennial team. I could not ask for a better team. They're amazing, and they have been so invested, and it's been great. They've just come together around this and really worked to amplify it, and really believed in this. So I'm so grateful because it was hard and it was
Yeah.
challenging, but community made it what it is. The readers did this, and so it's just always felt like this joint effort, and letting me know you can't do everything on your own, so don't even try. So
Right.
there's
Right.
people,
Yeah.
and then
Which
and
like
there's
really ties in nicely.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So it will be not. It really is a collaborative effort between me and the readers, and that's this journey. So I couldn't act. That's what I wanted, and that is they've proven they've told their own story, and I'm proud of all of us.
Yeah, it's incredible. And I also think like, like you're saying, you obviously you can't do it all on your own, but at the same time, I think that the belief that you showed in yourself, in your book, and in readers, in like the world, and
Yeah,
like people will read this, like it will work. I feel like that's a thing that is so hard for so many aspiring writers to get to, is like you do have to be the person who believes in yourself first, and there will be those gatekeepers who don't get it,
yeah,
who aren't your people, who aren't your books people. And it's a really weird thing to both like try and trust other people's viewpoints and, be like humble and all of that, but to also know what you have to offer the world. And like, you could have just been like, okay, I'm shelving this book, and then like it wouldn't exist. And like you
yeah,
already, when you just put it out into the world, there were people there waiting for it, just like
yeah.
hungry for it. That's a beautiful story. I'm so happy that
Thank
that's
you.
how it went.
I am too. It's it's been beautiful, and I think for aspiring writers, and people who have the idea and have the story, and don't quite have the faith yet.
Mhm.
I do always try to tell that story and unpack it and encourage people that it is meaningful. The idea you have, it wouldn't have occurred to you if it didn't have fertile soil, if you weren't fertile soil for it. And you do have to believe in yourself. But there will be people, you don't have to believe in yourself that far, just a little bit. And then there will be people who will join with you and believe as well. So
that's so awesome. I'm so grateful for your readers, because this is, it's like I maybe never would have even read this, and it was one of my favorite books of the year. So like, thank you to all of the OG readers out there. Anyone who's on here, like, thank you. So do you want to do they're not like that silly, but do you want to do like a quick little lightning round thing, and then we can take more questions from the audience? Because I think that'd be fun. Let's do it. I have I got a new computer, and so I'm like, I keep losing track of the clock on it. Like, as soon as I got a new computer, it just aged me 25 years.
Oh my gosh, I know. Any new technology is like, all of a sudden you feel like, where have I been this whole time?
I just don't have it in me. Okay. So let's see. If you could go on vacation with one of your characters, who would it be? And if it's Miss Gretchen, then choose someone else also. You could just say TV.
I would go on vacation with Layla, because I'm sure she's going to have fun.
Yes.
And but Ms. Gretchen also. If I could go on vacation with the two of them, I think that would be
together.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Like, you would get arrested. Like, it would be like,
definitely gonna get arrested.
Yeah, you'd get stranded like in Mexico for some reason. One of them would get married. Like,
you're definitely gonna get arrested if you go on vacation with them. Yeah.
That's a great answer. Okay, what is so I did say originally the book that made you fall in love with reading, but we can also go with a book, because that's a lot of pressure. So a book that made you fall in love with reading.
You know what? There was I really feel like Waiting to Exhale. When I read that book, it was a contemporary fiction book, and it was one of the first I'd read that was kind of this reflection of Black womanhood.
Yeah.
And one of the first times I felt represented in fiction, in literature, and like where I could relate and like kind of see some version of myself or future self. So I just remember the way I felt when I read that.
Yeah, that's powerful. I mean, that's a powerful experience, and there's going to be a lot of like young readers, I feel like, who are going to have that same experience with your book. Okay, do you read one book at a time or multiple?
I try to read multiple, but I'm the world's slowest reader. It's embarrassing. I'm like,
it just means you're really absorbing it.
I know. I guess I'm like really paying attention. I will go back and reread it if I felt like I missed something. So I am like the world's slowest reader. So I cannot read more than one book at a time. I will finish the whole thing, and I'll just make myself. And I like finish. I'm super like goal focused, so I will make myself finish my read, and then I'll move on to the next book.
Yes. I think if I'm reading multiple books, it takes me about 500 times longer to read any individual book that's included in that.
Well, you're such a prolific reader. I'm like, this is amazing. And if you could just like bottle that, I would drink it, whatever it is.
I mean, it happens for like, it really is this weird like obsessive thing that happens. So it will happen for weeks. I'll just be like reading a book a day, and then I'll just be like, I don't want to see a book in my peripheral vision for like a year. So knowing that you're like you like structure, you like checking things off a list, do you have like a solidified TBR pile, or do you just kind of like go with the flow, whatever you're in the mood to read, that sort of thing?
I have a TBR pile, and I stack them. So I like to have the physical book, and they're like literally in a pile.
I love that. Like, just the most literal, like, it's just like when you look up TBR in the encyclopedia, it's just like a picture of your like bedside table.
I know, it literally is a TBR pile.
Yeah, this is where we diverge, because I am all chaos in my reading. I'm just like, what's okay? Would you rather only ever write first drafts and then hand them off and someone does something to them, or only ever revise drafts that somebody else has already created for you?
Of my own work?
Yeah, I feel like it's sort of like if you blinked and missed one of those experiences, it's like which would you give up if you had to? Is it like do you prefer writing the first draft
or editing?
Yeah.
I would prefer to write the first draft, I think. But I do believe excellence happens in editing, so I love the editing process.
Well,
but yeah,
that's awesome that you like both.
I no, not mine.
Oh, okay.
No. I love the editing process, like conceptually, but no, I don't like doing it. So I will take the first draft every time. No, when I got actually it was a copy edit for this, but it was the first time I ever done a copy edit, like a formal process with my major, but with HarperCollins, I needed a glass or 4 of wine. I was like, I was like, oh my God, this is horrible. Like, this is the worst thing that's ever been written. And I'm like, it's going to take me a year to make it better. But thankfully we got through it. But it took me some wine to go through.
Yeah, no, I am the same way. I feel like every single stage, it's like the changes get smaller and smaller, and theoretically it should get easier. But by the end, you're just like crawling, like dragging yourself along the floor with your fingernails, just like, I have to read this one more time, and like I would just rather give up and die.
Yeah, or I could, yeah, exactly.
Or I could drink another bottle of wine.
I know, exactly. Like sometimes it's like I just have to go to sleep and try this again tomorrow.
Oh my gosh, yeah, copy edits are brutal. I'm so grateful for copy editors because it's like the work that I do hate the most. And so when someone's like, this is wrong or fix this, whatever, it's like my brain is just kind of going through a paper shredder, but like, thank you to that person.
Exactly. No, it's such an amazing job that copy editors do, and I have it's like it may keep track of every detail. It's like 4 pages ago you said this, and now you're saying this, and this is not congruent, and I'm like, whoa, how did you even, so it's amazing.
It's the best thing in the world to not have to keep track of like how many Tuesdays are in your own book. Like it's so nice.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you won't let me.
Oh my God, that's the best.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a couple of questions. Somebody wants to know, Christina wants to know, are you a plotter or a pantser since this book is a series? So you have a general idea how each will be, or are you focused on each itself? Yeah, that's a great question. Do you know how this trilogy ends? And are you a plotter? You do?
I already wrote the last words of book 3 of the whole series. So I knew exactly where it was going.
From before the first book or after the first book, did you figure that out?
After the first book.
Okay, cool.
I mean, I had a concept in my mind, but after I wrote the first book, I knew where it was going. I had a lot of fun with the second book. I was like, oh, people are going to be so mad at me.
I'm really excited because it's like if you're gonna do a series, give me a reason. Like
oh yeah, people. There's a definite reason, and it's been so cool to watch the characters evolve and grow. Like they have to grow. Yeah. And they're they're changing and morphing, and I think their relationship as a reader that you have with them evolves, and it's complex. So I love that. So I'm definitely a plotter. I mean, I'm an engineer guy, so it's like I wish I could like pants it out, and I wish I was like more exciting, but I'm like misstructure, honey. I will plot that thing out. Like
well, now I'm just like, okay, so you plan all of my books moving forward, then I can only write them one time instead of having to write them like 4 times because I didn't think about it beforehand. Kathy says, I've read the 2 books in the series. Jayne, they are so good. When will book 3 come out?
So book 3 is coming out next year. I think we're planning for September. And the second book is a new edition. It's been rewritten, basically. There's some new scenes. It's new and improved. So I'm so excited about that. Yeah. And the new title is Black Girls Must Be Magic, and that is due in February.
Amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
Do you know that don't tell us because I'm sure you'll have to formally announce it, but do you have the title for book 3 yet?
No, not yet.
Okay, you've got like a lot to live up to.
I know. I was like, oh my gosh. I know. Like the second title, I was like, oh my gosh, I love the second title too.
Yeah. So it's good.
It's gonna have to. We're gonna need some magic for everybody. Send us good vibes for the title for book 3.
Yes, cannot wait. Well, let's see. I think we're about time. If anybody has any last minute questions, wait, is this? I don't really know how technology works. So, okay, cool. They're both. Oh, here's a good one. Bernie wants to know, do you think your characters would be friends? Do you mean, Bernie, do you mean from like like my characters and Jane's characters? Or do you mean like, I guess it has to be what it
That would
is.
be an interesting question. I do think that our characters would be friends.
I think Poppy, from people we meet on vacation, would also love to go on vacation with Laila. I think. I don't think they would be good for each other, but
right, exactly.
Like, they would have fun.
Exactly. Yeah. I think I agree with that one.
Yeah, and I think Tabitha, because Tabitha is like a little bit more like, even keeled and just like thinks things through and whatnot. I think she and January from Beach Read would probably be friends. I think like they would just be like everyone
and overthinkers.
Yeah, right.
Overthinkers. Yeah.
They would, when they go on vacation, they just separately journal like their goals out.
Right, or spend a long time figuring out exactly what they're gonna do.
Yeah, and then it's like bedtime.
Yeah. But
So
they'll drink wine though.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. So I think the answer to this is yes. And then anyone, like, I just think I have to come back to Miss Gretchen just to be like, I can't imagine anyone not wanting to be her friend. I like almost want you to do like a little like Miss Gretchen like novella about like her love life.
Right. I was thinking like maybe she's a prequel or something.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed writing her and kind of finding her voice and she doesn't exist, but she's one of my favorite people.
Yeah, she felt so real. I was wondering like so because we have like another minute, so I'm just gonna keep asking questions until they like broom me off the stage. Are any of your characters, maybe not, like, are they any of them based on real people, or do you feel like when you create characters, they're starting from scratch, or do you pull elements from people you know? How's that process for you?
I pull elements. So this is probably a little bit weird. Like I really came from an outsider perspective on this, but I cast my characters. Like I kind of think like a casting director, and I'm like, for this story arc, who do these people need to be for this story to play out in this way? So I kind of cast them and then build them out from there. And I'm like, I probably hear my dog destroy my office. But I cast the characters and I try to figure out who these people need to be in order for them to behave in these certain ways that are going to play out for the story. But they're not people I know, but there are little pieces of people that I know or little quirks that I sew in. Like I call them little figments of reality sewn in for the texture of the characters. So I definitely try to do that.
Yeah, that totally makes sense because, they just feel so real that I knew there had to be some, I don't know. I think that just goes back to you being a really observant, like people focused person, I think, where it's like, what makes a person versus a character. And
I try. I've had a lot of experience, like I said, with some very complex folks. So.
Well, I love this book so much. And I think, we're kind of wrapping up on time. I don't know if somebody from Book Soup was hopping back on or if we're just kind of saying our farewells. But everybody,
Hello. I mean, you can finish your sentence and finish
everybody, please buy Black Girls Must Die Exhausted, and you can do it by hitting that button.
Oh, yes, please. Yes, support your local bookseller. Thank you.
Yes. And congrats again, Jayne, for your publishing journey. I mean, that really is helpful for aspiring authors. So thank you for sharing that because, a lot of this stuff is mystifying sometimes. So it's really helpful. And thank you, Emily, for joining us and everyone for watching at home. And I wish you the best on the rest of your tour.
Thank you so much. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for having us, Emily. Thank you so much. You're a dream. I really just cannot express my thanks and appreciation.
Oh my gosh.
And thank you so much. So I appreciate everybody for attending and thank you for your support.
Everyone have a wonderful rest of the night. Oh, sorry. Zoom problems.
That's fine. I was just saying good night, everyone. And yeah.
Good night.
Good night.